introduce Chad Traeger, running for governor. Y'all are going to enjoy this.
Thank you, Chad.
You know what?
Awesome.
I'm reasonably certain you can hear me better without that microphone.
Okay.
Much better.
Yeah, good. Thank you for lunch. Thank you for being here. It's great to be. Y'all are a long way from everywhere else.
Yeah.
Here in Corpus.
That's what makes us so important.
Well, I love it here. Actually, for those of you who don't know, I've made a living the last number of years in the world of entertainment, doing comedy and music, and traveling all over the world, really, but all over the country. I did a show here in Corpus, I think it was last year, right before the shutdown started happening, if my memory serves. But I always enjoy coming down to Nueces County and spending time with the folks here. It's beautiful here on the third coast, as we like to say, I love the state of Texas. I love the state of Texas, and God has blessed Texas in a big way. We always say God bless Texas. I think over the course of our adult lives, sometimes we kind of lose the sacred and important meaning of that phrase, God bless Texas. We just kind of run through it. But I want to, what I've been trying to do is, as I travel around the state, is remind people how blessed we are. This is a great state. In fact, I believe we are the true last bastion of freedom in America. We really are. And what I mean by that, the Cato Institute just came out with their annual freedom, not a poll, it's their study, whatever. And they ranked, by their criteria, the freest states in America.
Texas.
And according to their statistics, Texas isn't even in the top 10. I'll let you go and research and study that. They actually have New Hampshire, number 1.
Free State Project.
Yeah, California is on the bottom of the list, that's for sure. But I don't believe that's true. I believe that Texas has the size. I believe that we have the population. We've got the economy. We've got the sense of history and dignity and destiny and legacy and just the sheer will of people for freedom. We have the ability to put Washington, D.C. back on track. D.C. doesn't want to be put back on track. Not the track that we think it should be on. D.C., this administration, by my estimation, they want to control but yet crash the plane being America. They want to bring us down. They want to destroy an economy. You heard Jen Psaki a few weeks ago at a press conference say that Joe Biden wants to fundamentally change the economy. We're seeing that happen. It's expensive driving around the state these days. You live in a motorhome. It's amazing to watch the things that we're accepting these days, and we're calling it new normal. There's a target on the back of Texas. DC wants Texas to fall. That's why because they know what we stand for. They know that we have the power to put them back on a certain track of freedom and American values. They don't want that to happen. Sounds funny to say, but you guys know that this is true. I believe that Texas is the rock that the rest of America anchors to and looks to for freedom. I've always said that here in Texas, we have what I call a humble arrogance. We walk a little bit taller, we hold our heads a little bit higher, our chests are stuck out. Everything's bigger in Texas, right? Because God's blessed Texas. We have an attitude here. It's a good attitude.
Yep.
I remind people everywhere I go that Texas is a spirit. It's not a geography. It's not an area code. It's not a zip code. Texas is more than a place on a map. It's more than a line on a border. It's a spirit. And the spirit of Texas, you can't teach it. You got to catch it. The spirit of Texas is caught. It's not taught. People either get it or they don't get it. That's why there's people who will move here to Texas and they catch the spirit of Texas. And sometimes they got more heart for Texas than people who were born here. You've seen it happen. Once you catch the spirit of Texas, I don't believe you want to get rid of it. You want to tell others about it. It's far more contagious than COVID. And I remember when I was a kid, we'd go to the mall and they had those kiosks set up, and they had those pictures that they would sell that were just like chaos, just colors and squiggly lines. and if you stared at it kind of cross-eyed, you remember those? You can see an image emerge. You remember those weird things? Once you saw it forever. Some people could never see it. I think that's the spirit of Texas. The spirit of Texas is alive and well because God's blessed Texas. And I believe we have a moral obligation because of God's providence and because of His divine hand, our history, the legacy that we have. We've got a moral obligation to keep Texas free, to keep Texas on that path. But right now what we're doing is we're emulating in many ways Washington, D.C., right here in Texas. Government's gotten so big that it's become a blob that just everything it touches it consumes, grows bigger, and just moves forward to consume even more and leaves folks like you in its wake. Big government is no joke. It's something that's very, very ugly. And I think that what we're doing by allowing that to continue is we're sort of thumbing our nose at the providence of God and saying we'll just do it ourselves. We don't need divine hand anymore. And I think we've got to be careful of this. And I didn't come here to preach to you, but Willie kind of got me in the mood. And I threw my hat in the ring to run in this primary Republican election. It was March 1st, and primaries do not split votes. I hear that a lot. Primaries are good for elections. And it's kind of like the playoff system. You want to have a good playoff so the best person goes to the World Series, right? So what we have here is, I threw my hat in the ring last year. It was July of 2020. I was in South Dakota. And July 2nd, I was waiting on President Trump to come. I was actually with Don Trump Jr. And my phone went off that evening at dinner. And I read a news notification that came in and said that the governor of Texas was now deeming more businesses and individuals non-essential, shutting down certain industries, certain businesses. And so I don't know if it's because I was drinking a glass of wine that night or hanging out with Trump, but I went to Twitter. Yeah. And I tweeted that I was going to run for governor in 2022 in the state of Texas. And it kind of set off a wildfire. I've got a large social media following that's out there, and a lot of people were encouraged by that. And I realized that people, they were kind of tired of these dictatorial mandates. They were tired of these unilateral decisions without any form of legislation that was governing their lives. They were tired of being told what they could do and what they couldn't do. They were tired that their constitutional rights were being trampled on. Their liberties were being stolen from them. There were a lot of things that were happening. You were told you couldn't go to church. A lot of people were told they couldn't go to work. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost their jobs. The economy was made a mockery in many ways. People were told they couldn't go to the gym. I don't know about you. I don't want to go to the gym. But I don't like being told I can't do. Now, see, I have this constitutional right that you may or may not realize, but the Constitution says that if I enter into a contract with another entity like that, like a gym, that the government can't step in and make that contract null and void. That's exactly what the governor of Texas did last year. So I counted over a dozen constitutional violations that happened on the part of this governor in the last 18 months. And I said, that's not conservative values. I don't understand why spending in the last 7 years has gone up $48 billion in the state. That's not fiscal conservatism. I don't understand why we're doing things like spending $300 million, $295 million on contact tracing. That right there is enough to push anybody out of office. I don't understand why our property taxes are going through the roof. They're continually going higher, skyrocketing. I don't understand why our energy grid is being mismanaged. We know that. People last February, they told me when I went on social media to talk about it, they said, oh, you poor Texans, you can't even handle a little cold outside. I said, it's not that it was cold outside, it's cold inside. We could see our breath and people were dying. That shouldn't happen in a place that's energy rich like Texas. Whenever we look around, we realize that we're not talking about a water crisis that's happening in the state. We're not paying attention to what's happening at the southern border. Oh no, we're talking about it. We're not doing anything about it. Something's got to happen here, folks, because what we have is an untenable future for the state of Texas. If we don't do something about Texas right now, we've got about 8 more years. And Texas will look like California. Texas will look like California. Now don't forget, California was a red state. California's the land of Ronald Reagan. Texas is headed that direction. Because we got, as we were talking about here at lunch, we were talking about around the table, what I like to call the blueberries that are in the chili. You got Dallas, and now you have Fort Worth, where I live, unfortunately, that's voted blue in the last 2 elections. You have El Paso, San Antonio, Houston, all of them blue. Of course, we've got Austin, which is the hub that drives them all. In Austin, we have 101 Republican House members. 101. And only 18, arguably 19, but I know of 18, only 18 that are calling for a special session to make sure that we make employer-mandated vaccinations illegal in this state. Only 18 are calling for it. Something's got to change. Where are the others? Where are the others? Why? Because they're following suit. Any problem that we have, all you got to do is follow the money. You want to know why the border's open? It's incentivized to be open. You can do the studies. They've done the studies. You can go out there and research it. Forbes magazine has done, they did an article in 2018. They followed up, the same author did an article in 2020. And this is what they said. They said that open borders will create a boost of $100 trillion, that's a stupid number that doesn't exist, into the global economy. So big government believes that by having an open border, they are incentivizing and stimulating an economy. Because they're bringing in cheap labor, they're bringing in more taxpayers, and of course the left knows they're bringing in more voters. We know that. The reason that our property taxes are going through the roof, the reason that we're increasing spending, the reason that we don't understand the value of the dollar anymore is because it's all incentivized in one way or another. And this has got to stop, folks. It's got to stop. I was in Brenham, Texas. I had a newspaper reporter. She asked me, she said, you think if you made it to Austin, do you think you'd be okay since Austin's not like the rest of Texas? I said, that's an interesting question. I said, the fact that Austin's not like the rest of Texas ought to tell you something. There's a problem. See, I think there should be legislation passed that if we're going to put an amendment in the Constitution, it should be ratified by 3/4 of the counties in the state. That way the population centers that have gone way blue aren't the ones who are dictating what we do here in Texas. Puts power back in these small counties. You see, right now, what we're looking at is we're looking at a government that doesn't care. Why do you think when you turn on the television and you see images of the southern border, video of the southern border and the crisis that's going on? They never show New Mexico, they never show Arizona, they never show California, they just show Texas. Because the target is on the back of Texas. They want Texas to fall. We're not doing anything about it. Oh, we're talking a good game. We're saying all kinds of things. In fact, I went onto my Facebook page, which I just got out of Facebook jail. Woohoo! I tend to go into Facebook jail a lot for saying really good things. I'm not politically correct, and that's okay. I don't believe in political correctness. I believe it's demonic. And I believe it controls language and it harms truth. And I also don't believe you can have a complex problem and solve that problem while still being politically correct. So, a few months ago, I posted 7 headlines on my Facebook page of what Greg Abbott was going to do about the border. They sounded great. The only problem was every headline was from 2015. And we still have the crisis. Why? Why do we have this crisis? Because it's incentivized. We know that we've got to stop this. We know we've got to stop the spending. My goal is to get government out of your life. I woke up September 1st with 666 new laws in my life in the state of Texas. That's an interesting number. I didn't go to bed the last night of August and hope that I was going to wake up with 600 some odd new laws tomorrow. But that's what I got. We're being regulated to death. Why is everybody talking about Ron DeSantis? Everybody wants to talk about what a great job Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida, and I commend Ron. He's doing a great job. But why is Texas left out? I have people that say, why aren't you guys more like South Dakota? Christi, no, she never shut down South Dakota. She never mandated anything. She didn't put masks on her people. I said, well, first of all, there's only 17 people in South Dakota, but...
No.
I said, I don't want to be South Dakota. I don't want to be Florida. I want to be Texas. South Dakota doesn't have its own toast. They don't have waffle irons in the shape of Florida.
We do.
We do. Look at that flag. You know, does anybody know what the South Dakota flag even looks like? We take the Lone Star and girls make bikinis out of it and float down the river in the summertime. Everybody recognizes that flag.
Stop.
They know.
Stop it.
We're Texas. And folks, we're losing a legacy. I was not born here. People who know me, they know that. They like to give me a hard time. I've been here for 20 years. I believe that when you're planted in the right soil, the seed will flourish. And Texas was the right soil for me. I grew up in the state of Georgia, went to the University of Georgia. And I will say this, I'm pro-life. I believe life begins at conception. And I believe life is sacred. And so I like to remind people that I was conceived in Texas. So I at least have Texas DNA. It was Dallas, don't hold that against me. Dallas was different in 1972. So they tell me. Miracles happen in strange places, right? But I love this state. And we got to get back to some things. And it's not that hard because, listen, finding solutions, while they may be politically incorrect sometimes, they're really not difficult. Sometimes they're very simple. But because the government's gotten so big, we've got to drag it through the muck and the mud of pushing things through. And that's a hard thing to do. Somebody's got to do that. So I threw my hat in the ring because, like I said, I wanted to get government out of your life. I want to make politics boring again. It's a shame what it's become. 2021, you shouldn't know who the name of the Secretary of the Interior is. But this is what we've done. We've turned it into a hobby. We've given a platform to political morons like AOC, Bobby O'Rourke, Eric Swalwell. The list goes on. These people don't offer anything. They don't offer anything. But they keep showing up. People keep throwing money at them. And they become part of the conversation. That's got to stop. Folks, we need real solutions. You talk about the border. We can do that. Listen, enforce the laws that are on the books. The laws are not being enforced. I've been at the border numerous times in the last year. I've seen National Guardsmen helping illegals out of the river and into Texas. Why aren't they saying stop? You can't come across. Yeah, I believe we should build Trump's wall. And that's not pandering to Trump. Trump did the research of what type of wall would work. That's the wall that needs to be built. But beyond that, we need a human wall. Article 4, Section 7 of the Texas Constitution says that in a situation like we're in right now, which is an invasion, when we're not getting help, that the governor of the state becomes the commander-in-chief of the Texas State Guard. We need to equip the Texas State Guard because let's face it, we need all hands on deck. We need the National Guard to be deployed. And we don't need them 30 miles back from the border. We need them on the border. We need the full resources, both human and material, of the DPS being enforced there. We do need the Texas State Guard equipped and trained and ready. We need civilians who are ready to go. We need veterans that are ready to go. Whatever it takes, we've got to shut that border down.
Not 11 months.
Now, you go down there right now, and I've watched it. I've seen this process happen. I've seen the Texas DPS stand with illegals in a parking lot while they change clothes because they bring it. They come over the crossing points in the river, and they come over and they've got a bag. And in that plastic bag, they've got a change of clothes and some other belongings. And they strip down with the wet clothes, and they put on the dry clothes, and they don't run off, they wait. You know what they do? They're waiting for Border Patrol. Border Patrol comes, picks them up, and acts like an Uber driver. Takes them to a processing center where they get a background check. They get a date 2 years out to come back for a hearing. And then they're either given a bus ticket or a plane ticket if they can claim that they have family somewhere in the United States. I've been in the McAllen Airport. I've seen the hundreds of these manila envelopes that says, I do not speak English. Help me get to the right gate. And what's in those envelopes are credentials, and the speculations go on for whatever else might be there. Slapping them on the wrist and turning them loose into the interior. I've seen the buses loaded, leaving Del Rio. Sheriff Joe Frank Martinez, who is a Democrat there in Del Rio, Valverde County, They represent 121 miles of border. He says, I didn't like the last administration, but the last administration had this problem shut down. He said, I voted for this administration and it's a mess. He's told me this face to face in his office. He told me that this year alone, they've apprehended 84 different nationalities. There's not 84 countries below us. They're coming from all over the world. So now, I don't know how Haitians learn to walk on water, but they're here by tens of thousands. And they're coming up from Chile because of the 10 years ago from an earthquake. That's where they're coming from. My friend Weston Martinez is running for land commissioner. Every time I see him, he's got another stack of ID cards from Chile, and they're Haitians on the ID card. They're dropping those cards and coming across. And they have mixed in with them what the Border Patrol is calling exotics. Now, these are people who are from Yemen and Oman and Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq. That's who's coming across. We're seeing this happen. Something's got to stop this. If we took one day and put a human wall of defense on that border and said, you're not coming across, the phones would start ringing in two parts of the world. One, it would reverberate all the way down to Costa Rica within 24 hours because the cartels would want to know why their packages aren't getting across. And the phones would be ringing in Washington, D.C., and then back to the Border Patrol heads back on our border because Washington, D.C. would want to know why we're stopping. That's problematic. The cartels, no one is coming into this country without the assistance of the cartels. The cartels in Valverde County, that 120-mile stretch right across the river or across from Lake Amistad, that city of Acuna, the cartels right there making $25 million a week because of human trafficking, organ harvesting, sex trafficking, drugs, cocaine, fentanyl, opiates. We know that's coming across. I've seen them. I've stood there on the banks at night seeing the boats coming across. Got to stop this. Washington, D.C. is not coming to our aid. In a situation like this, we have to have, as I said, the state guard ready, because what's going to happen is if we start putting in these types of measures, Washington, D.C. is going to put a stop to the National Guard, and it's going to be left to the state and the civilians. We have to detect, we have to detain, we have to deter, we have to deport, and we have to defend, and that is not politically correct. Folks, our state's worth it. We have to establish our sovereignty and stop asking the federal government for permission. We're the last ones big enough to hold their feet to the fire. Folks, America needs Texas. Texas doesn't need America. People say, oh, but they send us money. Let me tell you something. We send $165 billion a year to Washington, D.C. They give us some of it back. That's like going to the clinic. They drain 100% of your blood and give you 40% back and smack you on the rear end and tell you they hope you feel good tomorrow. That's what Washington, D.C. is doing for us. Folks, this has got to stop. We've got to get to a point where we stop this immoral property tax. People don't own their land. They rent it their entire lives. Listen, God did not impose a property tax on the Jews 6,000 years ago. You read your Bible and see that because the land was the promise to the children and their children's children.
Preach, brother.
So, I believe if the Israelites 6,000 years ago could figure out a way to not have property tax, that the 21st century in Texas, right now, we could put the best conservative fiscal minds, economic minds to that task, and maybe we can figure it out too. There's other ways to pay for things. And maybe we don't need a $60 million high school stadium. It's amazing the things that we accept. Because if we pass that, we vote for it, we say, yeah, you know what, let's build us a big old stadium. But you know what? After the stadium's built, they don't take it back down. And to that point, what we've got to do, we don't have a state property tax. It's controlled on the local level. We got to stop putting immoral people on these boards and putting these people on these municipalities. Stop putting immoral people who do not have an understanding of what a dollar is. They're going to tax you to death. Travel around the state, I run into 6th and 7th generation ranchers, and they say, our kids don't even want it. Our kids don't want this land. Got illegals running across it. Can't pay for it. Farming and ranching has lost its legacy in Texas, so there's no wealth in it. And what are we doing? We're apologizing for the things that made Texas great. We apologize for oil and gas. We apologize for fossil fuel emissions. We apologize for coal. We're the number 2 producer of lignite coal in the nation. Now, we don't have great coal, but it burns when it gets cold. And last February, when everything shut down, those coal plants were lying dormant. All we had to do is turn them on and turn the knob, but that didn't happen. We provide 40% of America's oil. 26% of America's marketable natural gas. And what are we doing? Apologizing. Because we want to make ideologies into policies. I believe in green energy. I'm all for green energy as long as we don't subsidize them with our government taxpayer dollars. Let those green energy companies stand on their own 2 feet. So when their windmills break down, we don't bail them out. But that's what's happening. We got to get back to this. Stop apologizing. Let's do what's made Texas great. Let's do what makes Texas wealthy. And let's do what makes Texas blessed. And let's put those things back in place. In fact, I got a good idea for the windmills. We just put them on top of that wall on the border and just let them spin. Let that be like the last obstacle.
First one.
Folks, we're in a bad situation. We really are. And they're not doing anything. They're saying it. And here's the funny thing about it. Had a guy from NBC call me a couple of weeks ago. He said, according to the media, I said, let me stop you right there. Because what you're about to say is nonsense. He said, well, according to the media, your governor in Texas is doing a good job as a conservative. I said, what's he doing? I know what he's saying. What's he doing?
No.
Not doing anything. Call another special session, but yet not going to deal with gender modification of our children. Not going to deal with property taxes. It becomes a footnote. This discussion. We're not going to talk about the vaccine mandates. Oh, he'll call another special session. He'll do it in January. But it'll be over election reform, election integrity. Because Donald Trump has already sent him a letter saying that if you don't deal with this, I'm going to rescind my endorsement.
Wish you would.
Here, here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to be so outspoken, but I wish you would.
You being outspoken does not shock me. But we're going to see some of these things play out. Every time he calls a special session, that's just free campaigning on the taxpayer dollar. Brings him back. Because the news media tries to expose Abbott as, oh, he's this evil conservative guy that doesn't like abortion and all these things. And conservatives in the state, they're like, yeah, that's our governor. But the problem is he's not doing those things. Those are the things that aren't happening. He didn't want to pass a constitutional carry bill, and he didn't pass a constitutional carry bill. They passed a permitless carry bill. The GOP priority was constitutional carry. The GOP priority was abolishment of abortion. The GOP priorities, they weren't touched. Really only 2 or 3, and nominally so. I mean, with this constitutional quote-unquote carry law that we have now in the state of Texas, do you understand that this was 1776, that James Madison and Alexander Hamilton wouldn't be allowed to carry a gun? That's not constitutional. But young men and women who go and die for our country, they can't carry a gun. But again, that's not constitutional. Folks, we got to get back and call things what they are. Because what's happening right now isn't good. I know in 1773, some of our founding fathers, they went out into Boston Harbor because they felt like they weren't being represented, and they weren't. They were feeling the tyranny of the boot on the back of their neck from King George. And that taxation without representation inspired them to go out there and start spilling that tea, which was taxed, into the harbor. The same thing's happening here, folks. Look at all the tyrannies we have. The big government, federal government and state, telling you what to do. Unilaterally, dictatorially telling you what to do. Shutting you down. The mandates and the shutdowns last year, those weren't passed through the legislation. They told you what to do. One man did. A unilateral decision. Look at the others. We've got educational tyranny. Our kids aren't learning. In fact, I think the public school system, which is built on the foundation of the Dewey man system of humanism and socialism, which churns out little Marxist thinking communists and sends them off to education places of higher learning, such as our colleges and our universities, which are run by liberal, lunatic, progressive leftists with a board of regents that are appointed by this governor. And they graduate after 4 or 5 years deeply in debt with a degree in undecided. They don't know how to think critically. They don't know how to think with complexity, because the only thing they ever learned was how to take a STAR test. And our teachers' hands have been tied. Our educators can't live out their dream of molding young minds. We've got to untie those hands. and let them go back to teaching and testing and evaluating and promoting. They're not doing that. And our kids are dumb. They're dumb. You know why? Because we're dumb. Thinking hurts. It's uncomfortable. We think in sound bites now. If it's a video longer than 15 seconds, we're not watching. Not going to read a book. How dare we even think about reading a book? Poetry! Poetry!
Especially American.
When I was in college, I memorized the New Testament. I wanted to. I memorized poetry. Here's one that's fitting for you. Walt Mason, 100 years ago. There's a man in this world who's never turned down wherever he chances to stray. He gets a glad hand in a populous town and out where farmers make hay. He's greeted with pleasure in deserts of sand, deep in the aisle of the woods, wherever he goes. There's a welcoming hand. He's the man who delivers the goods. I want Texas to be filled with people who deliver the goods. That's what I want. People that show up with substance. No, right now we're being ruled over, folks. Educational tyranny, judicial tyranny. We're seeing medical tyranny. I was riding down the street just yesterday. On the highway, there's a billboard. Medical professional says, not all heroes wear capes. Well, apparently not all heroes get to keep their jobs in Texas either. It's a shame. But you're being told what to do medically. Listen, we got to stop these mandates, and I'm going to hush because I know that the brain can't absorb more than the seat can endure, so I'm going to hush. We got to stop these things. Listen, my term of employment, I have employees that work for me. And if I have certain things I want them to do those 8 hours there in our offices, that's one thing. But I can't tell them if it's a uniform, I can't say, you got to sleep with the uniform on. You got to keep that on 24 hours, 365. I can't do that. Well, that's what we're telling people to do. By putting an unknown chemical substance in their body that they got to live with. No telling what the ramifications or results or consequences can be. People do have adverse effects to putting things in their bodies. We're unique in that way. I'm unvaccinated. I have no intention of ever being vaccinated. I don't care if you get vaccinated. I believe in freedom. I believe in freedom. But this medical tyranny's got to end. We're seeing corporate tyranny. You understand big tech, social media, all that. I mean, we talk about Facebook jail and getting shut down and being censored. I mean, I can show you the graphs over the last 7 years of my career of what's happened online with us. Conservatives being censored. They're going to continue to do that. You know what? You know what Texas is doing? Texas is throwing the doors wide open to Silicon Valley. You know we're the #2 subsidizer of Facebook in the nation? We pay Facebook second only to California. We've thrown the doors open to Facebook, Google, Tesla. Tesla's now making their headquarters in Texas. You think Elon Musk is a good person to be moving into Texas? I'm telling you, it's not. Because let me tell you, regardless of what you think about a man, he's going to bring in an ideology. That's right. Corporately, they're bringing in ideology. When Amazon comes here, Google comes here, Facebook comes here, and you know what? As soon as they mandate that, you say, well, that's jobs for Texans until the mandate comes, and then they fire you, and what are they going to do? They're going to call California and get their cronies who are already indoctrinated and inoculated to come take those jobs that were intended for Texas. And they're going to bring with them their money, they're going to bring with them their ideologies, they're going to bring with them their vote. So folks, we keep throwing these gates wide open, and we're not going to have a Texas in 10 years. So what's going to happen? That anchor is holding here in Texas for now, but it's starting to shake in the ground a little bit. We got to make sure that that anchor of freedom stays solid, folks. And back to that Boston Tea Party, I think it's time we all go to Travis County and have an Austin Tea Party.
Yeah. Here.
I've read a lot of things about COVID and coronavirus. I don't understand any of it, neither do the doctors or the scientists. But I have read the Texas Constitution and I've read the U.S. Constitution. I understand that pretty good. And I know the Constitution was not written to keep me healthy, and it wasn't written to keep me safe. It was written to keep me free. So at the end of the day, when people talk about Texas, I don't want them talking about Ron DeSantis in Texas. I want to be able to pat Ron on the head and say, well, that was a good effort. We'll show you what freedom's all about. We'll show you what liberty looks like. And regardless of what the naysayers say, let's get ourselves back into a place of liberty. Get government out of our lives. We can do that. Let's make conservatives conservative again. Let's make government small again. Let's end the spending. We talk about putting immoral people in these positions. We got to stop the immorality at the top. I appreciate you, I really do, and I'm thankful for the time. And it's a blessing getting to travel all over Texas because I'm fired up about Texas. I love this state. It's a beautiful place, and my bloodhound Pepper, she's been traveling with me. And you saw Pepper a little while ago. She's seen, when she's awake, she's seen more of Texas in the last 4 or 5 months than most people see in their lifetime. Some of the other guys that are running in the primary, they like to talk about the field offices that are opening up. My field office is a Ford truck. It's parked out here. And I take it with me wherever I go. But I encourage you folks, visit me, Prather2022.com. You find out more. If you like small government, you'll like me. And we've got some cards over here. You're welcome to pick them up as a reminder. Prather2022.com. And again, I have fun for a living, so you can also go to Beto22.com. Still comes to me. Figure we get ahead of the game, you know?
Is he offered to buy it from you?
There's no amount of money. And I will say this, I'm thankful that there are other men that are running in this primary. I've known those men for a number of years. We're very different, but we're very much alike in a lot of ways as well, in terms of our ideologies and our thoughts about conservatism. I always say I'm not running against them. I'm running against Greg Abbott, I'll be honest with you. I'm running alongside them. And we're grassroots, which is a political speak for saying we're broke. But I'm thankful for that because we're proving a point. We have people that will show up to the primary to vote who have never voted in a primary because somebody like me is running. And that's a good thing. If you don't believe, you talk about election integrity. Here's how you get election integrity back. You overwhelm their algorithm by showing up. They can only turn the knob so high. They didn't turn it high enough for Hillary in 2016. You saw it happen. They turned it up way too high for Puddinhead in 2020. And they got embarrassed. They didn't mean to get 81 million votes.
They got caught.
They did. We got to keep exposing them for the frauds that they are. So think of yourself as an algorithm. Show up. Overwhelm it. And yes, we do need forensic audits of every election. When I win, I'll demand a forensic audit of my own election. I want to know that I know that I know. Good to be assured. But I appreciate you guys. Willie, thank you for sharing your gift. Be safe on the road. And thank you for running. And thank you for representing. And all of you, I appreciate you so much. It's great to be in Texas. God has blessed us, hasn't He? It really has. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the lunch.